All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order, Wednesday, October 23rd, Board of Selectmen meeting. The first order of business is the pledge. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next on the agenda is visitors. Anybody from visitors like to speak this evening? All right, moving on. Approval of minutes from October 9th, 2019.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
We have next on the agenda resignations and appointments. The first is the resignation from Kim Colgrove for the Shellfish Commission. Be looking for a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
She wasn't on there very long, was she? Just like a couple of months? Okay, never mind.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
We have resignation of Steve Hayes from Harbor Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
You know, sometimes I don't know how you thank people for their years of service, but wasn't Steve like chair of the Harbor Commission for more than 20 years?
I send off a note, a thank you note. If you'd like to do something more formal, we can do that as well.
No,
Yeah, I
just so
agree.
that you
He did a lot of
know
time.
that he did a good job for a long time. He's kind of been out of things a little bit in the most recent years, but
Well,
the heart gets frustrating after a while when you don't get your boat grant. But anyway.
Nancy Stone, resignation Nancy Stone from Human Services Advisory Board.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Mike Didiano from Inland Wetlands Commission.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
We have under reappointments Chevalier Olet from the Human Service Advisory Board until June 30, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
We have Jeff Fetzer, Fire Marshal, for a term until July 1, 2023.
So made. Second.
Discussion? Thank Jeff for his patience getting you there. All those in favor?
Aye.
And now we're on to Human Services, the grant-funded contract approval for Mark Goldstein. Everybody should have that. This was run by council, so it has been reviewed. So I'd be looking for a motion to sign.
Yeah, but, can I ask David a question?
Sure, without objection. If Dave-
That's
Dave here.
$8,400, correct?
David, would you mind, if you're going to speak, just coming right up, so, sorry.
It's $8,400 is coming out of one of your grants, correct? Or-
Yes,
Okay.
he's all grant money.
Any other questions? I'd be looking for a motion to approve the authorization to sign.
Make that motion. Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye. That was easy.
Mine was a stay. Oh, sorry, we're
This is
jumping.
for the next item.
All right, thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is the SAMHSA grant, the creation of a dual role, part-time position, one full-time position. So just to explain this a little bit, we currently have a part-time position that's partially funded, $7,500 through another grant. And so there's a current part-time position funded, partially funded. And so half of that salary is partially funded at $7,500. The other half is town contribution. The SAMHSA grant, in order to administer the grant, the town needs to create another part-time position. The role for the grant, and I'll let the director of the department speak to it a little bit as well, but the role of that person overlaps with the current roles and would be expanded upon of the existing part-time person anyway. So we saw this as an opportunity to mold it into one position. The grant would cover that part-time role and the cost of that and the benefits to that. So this is an opportunity to sort of streamline, help the office streamline for the next 5 years and not have to have additional part-time employees. As we know, it's challenging to find part-time employees, and you usually get a better commitment from the staff if you're able to give them full-time with benefits as well. So it just made sense, so I wanted to bring it to the board for your consideration.
It's the social services assistant position, not the person downstairs.
So it's not that grant, it's not covered. I apologize, I'm gonna take that back. About the 7,500 is not covered by this part-time position. Sorry, we were entertaining which part-time employee at first.
Well, this says 2 part-time and 1 full-time, correct?
You're turning to,
I'm turning, yes, 2 part-times, one of which would be brand new, to make 1 full-time. All of the extra money and the benefits that would go along with it would be paid off of the grant. And so there'd be no cost to the town. You'd still be paying for her hours that are dedicated to the social services department.
So this is a 5-year grant.
Mhm.
So the person knows it's just a 5-year position.
They would be receiving a contract from the town stating that this position is a 5-year contract and the benefits that you are availed through the non-union benefits.
If you look at the additional notes on the back of the job
Yeah, we just
description.
got this, so.
No, I know. I just wanted to show you that it's right there in the job description.
Yeah, as long as they realize it's just a 5-year and we don't have it, you know, because we get,
It would be in the ultimate contract for the employee, yeah.
thank you, thank you.
So does anybody have any questions? I did want to bring it to the board because technically it's creating another full-time employee, but again, the benefits are covered, and the payroll and all that. So there's no additional cost to the taxpayer for the position. But again, I felt as though it would help streamline the office and just be a little bit less work having part-time people coming in and out, having a full-time person.
It saves us creating a separate space for someone to be able to sit and a phone and all of that, but it does go beyond that. When you have somebody who's working in the vicinity of like 10 hours a week, and that means they're not there 25 hours a week, and any question has to be delayed. And while we will create separation between the 2 functions of the position, all of that information will be readily available. And for the grant, this is going to be a lot of data entry. They have their software. There's 3 different softwares we need to master for the grant, and I want this person to take care of at least 2 of them.
And the town's financial software as well. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So training is another component of it. So I would be looking for a motion to do this. There's no budgetary change, so it doesn't need to move on from here, but I would like to put on the record.
Okay, I make a motion, we creation of a dual role, 2 part-time positions and 1 using the SMA HSA grant and for a 5-year period.
Second.
Do we have further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is the tax incremental financing policy. So without objection, I'd like to welcome John Allen, Chair of the EDC, and Hank Teskey is also from the Economic Development Commission, just to speak a little bit about it. Regarding this policy, this is something that I think the Board of Selectmen could endorse to some extent. I'm not necessarily looking for a vote to move it forward, but and correct me if I'm wrong, you're looking for that motion. I thought this was something that it would behoove the town to start the process, and then when the town council comes in, they can evaluate it, but at least getting the conversation going, and so everybody fully understands what a TIF is and how it can support development of business in town. So without objection, I'll let both John Allen and Hank speak on it.
I'll just start a bit. I mean, one, it's, what we wanted to do is get this in the pipeline, and, you know, just to be practical, some of you are going to be on the town council next year, so there's some corporate memory that's going to be happening here as we kind of move on. Last time we were here, we talked about actually having a tax abatement, the incentive program done. This is kind of another facility that a lot of towns have that we figured we could actually get rolling on here. It's an ability to actually attract businesses in, to help businesses. Again, the underlying premise is it's not to take tax money away from anybody and not to lower our grand list, but it's actually to talk about any incremental. It's all focused on any incremental taxes we would have and some various ways we could handle this thing. It's also, this is a pretty exhaustive thing, but this is the first time, it's a draft. It can be modified and it will be modified. Any actions here have to be going through the EDC, the governing body of the town, and some of these things, like crime districts, has to go to a town vote, so none of this stuff is capricious. There's a real process to this, and then Hank can give you the real important stuff.
Hi. So to tell you a little bit about TIFs in Connecticut, tax incremental financing, it's been there's an enabling statute, a Connecticut general statute that allows municipalities to grant TIFs, but it was pretty restrictive until 2015, and then in 2015, Public Act 15-57 was passed, which made it much more liberal and usable, friendly, and a lot of towns began to adopt them. Not everybody uses TIFs, not all towns in Connecticut do, but several do. And so when the Economic Development Commission hired CERC to help us with this stuff, one of the things that they talked about as a tool that towns use to incentivize development in the town are TIFs. And so we talked about the possibility of a TIF in Clinton. And to give you an idea, or to explain a little better what a TIF is, tax incremental financing. So if you have a building or a property that's worth $100 and you want to go put another $100 on it, actually it could be worth $0 and then you make it $100 investment on it. So it's the increment from wherever it is on the tax rolls today to where it's going to be. And if you commit to spend a certain amount of money and invest it in that particular property, then that increment, that the additional taxes that will be generated from that will go into this fund, and then Clinton will track this fund, this separate segregated money that's not in the general fund of Clinton, to be used for certain purposes. The state statute lists permissible purposes. So in the policy that we've drafted for Clinton that you have before you, it's a what's known as like a long arm statute, which is fully expansive. Everything that the state permits us to do, we would put in our policy that we might do. You don't have to do it. It's just a policy that gives you the power to do it if you wanted to. So now that increment, that $100 increment, the tax goes into this particular fund and you could do certain things with it. One of the things that you would do is you would develop infrastructure or a park, an industrial park, or landscape or streetscape type things. There are things, improvements, sidewalks, waterworks, sewer. There's all kinds of infrastructure things that you could do with the incentive or the purpose of developing more business in that area. Second, you could give the money back to the investor. If somebody comes to the town and says, I'm going to go put a building up, or I'm going to take a building that exists and make significant investment, but I need to go to the bank and borrow money to go pay for this. And the bank is giving me a little trouble to loan me this kind of money because the return out over time isn't meeting the return on invested capital requirement that the bank, in order to give this type of mortgage or this amount of financing. And so the lowering of taxes increases the return over time, and therefore might get someone qualified for a loan or get them financial assistance that they might not otherwise get. So those are the things you can do with the money: infrastructure, other development projects within the town, or give it back to the. And you could actually do a combination of them. You could do both. Actually, that's fairly common, that over a protracted period of time, you could do the first 10 years or 5 years or whatever, some period of time, give it back to the person who developed the property to get them to do it. And then that expires, and then the money comes to the town. So it's in a separate fund, as I said, and that fund will be dispersed in the ways that the TIF agreement outlines or describes. So that you can, one other free feature of TIFs is that you could do it specifically with a particular project or particular property or a particular developer. Or you can define, it's a little more complicated if you do this, but you can define a district. You can identify an area in town and draw a boundary around it and say, this is our TIF district, and put it out to the public or developers so that they know that the town has an interest in developing this area. And you could even put criteria in what ways you want it developed. You want this to be an industrial park, or you want this to be an entertainment district. however you want that district to be developed, if they do it in the way that you want them to, then they'll get tax benefits.
And I think
incentives.
that's, I mean, because it sounds like we're saying the same thing about a month ago about the kind of tax benefits you get from the the abatement program. This is the difference that I think gives it a wonderful, this facility, being able to designate an area in our town. I always talk downtown, because I always think that would be, it's a wonderful place just to designate, especially coming off of the Unilever properties, that are downtown here, we could say, this is an area where there's one, the awareness of the town has designated this as something that's important. Maybe we get some of these landlords to figure, maybe this is a good time to invest in putting new facades on or anything, not major stuff. And it has a communicative value as well as a credit value to these people. That's one of the nice things about having TIF. You create a district. I mean, you actually let the world know this is a part of the town we're really, and especially if you apply this on top of what the POCD is. I mean, actually, because we have the 7 districts and we haven't been doing anything with this thing for 4 or 5 years. Here's a chance to go through with the new town council to say, look, here's a few things we could, let's create let's go after this district and say this is an area where we should use all the tools we've got. So it's a different way of helping an investor. Hank is expert with the money part of it. I just think from a marketing point of view of people letting know that Clinton has actually got some of these ambitious, aggressive ways of identifying things in town, that we mean business. What part of the plan?
Just as an example, you have the Route 81 corridor study that was just complete that speaks to certain types of amenities that would be nice. Doesn't necessarily mean a developer is going to come along on Route 81 and do them, but if you create a TIF, you could start to direct some of those funds to those types of improvements, and that's another mechanism that you could utilize it for.
You can name the district my marketing thing. You could name it something. You could say the downtown revitalization. You're now entering the Abel Buell revitalization area, you know? I mean, you could actually do something where something is going on in the town and there's really something behind it. Anyway.
There was a town way up on 395 that used it to develop an industrial park.
Yeah,
Plainville, was it Plainville?
Plainville or Danielson.
Yeah, so there's more than one.
They used the taxes and it's really
Yeah.
quite successful.
Right.
Yeah, the one that we have here for Clinton is lifted heavily from the Southfield TIF. CERC wrote that. I don't know if CERC copied it from there or they used their boilerplate and gave it to them and to us, but they look very similar. We could contact Southfield and see what.
He's there now.
Success.
Isn't Kevin, is that where he went?
Yeah, so we could see what success, if any, they've had with that TIF district.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
One other point with regard to TIFs is that the town has general obligation bonds that it floats, and it could also do bonds. I'm not suggesting that we do this, but if it got mature or much more sophisticated, you could take bonds with the revenue from the TIF district dedicated to retire the debt. It gets pretty sophisticated.
Anyway, I want to present it to you. It's something that we're in the next 3 weeks from now.
So maybe what might make sense is to take, so what I gave you was, one is the TIF proposed policy for the town of Clinton as written by CERC, which is much like a lot of other towns in Connecticut, and we can modify it any way we want. And then the second document is, or the first, whichever you look at it, Tax Incremental Financing Guidebook. There's an organization up in Hartford called Connecticut Main Street Center that does these types of things. They're a nonprofit, and we could talk to them if we wanted, or we could have them come down and give live experiences of towns that have had success. But they put out a 101 guidebook on what a TIF is and how it works. So maybe you could digest, the Board of Selectmen could look at this stuff and think about it, digest it, and then we can come back again and field some questions if you have them.
It's been quite a long time that we had Connecticut Main Street Program at the time. It was called Come Into the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's probably 5 years ago. Maybe it's a good time to bring them back in, because it would incorporate the Planning and Zoning Commission to potentially utilize some of the areas of the plan and conservation development, those 7 areas that John talked about, and talking about these TIFs as well. I think they offer a lot. I think in the POCD it does talk about becoming a member of them, and the town has never actually taken that action either. So there's a lot of benefit to the programs they offer. Perhaps, when the new town council comes in, it might be great to have a joint meeting or include them in the meeting.
Absolutely. One other feature to TIFs that I think is important for you to know and understand is that if there are certain commitments that the developer makes, like employment commitments or capital investment commitments, and they don't meet them, generally it's capital investment commitment, so that if they don't meet it, then they don't get the tax break because there's no tax, right? And so it's self-regulating. But if there's an employment or some other type of provision that they don't meet, they often have clawback provisions too, so that if there was some tax.
Like employment levels?
Yeah, so if you had, say you got to maintain employment levels of 100 people for 5 years, and for the first 2 years they do, and in the third year they don't, you can have a clawback provision where they got to give the money back. That's typical.
Same with the abatement.
Just like the term clawback. It's a great term, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, again, not looking for a motion, just wanted to bring this to the table so everybody understood, because the conversation will continue. Hopefully when the new council comes in, this is something they can action and start to get on something on the books.
If you have any questions, in between, and you're curious, feel free to ask.
I'm going to try to get some information about Southington and see what they
Yeah.
have there.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you very much for the work. Next on the agenda is the Clean Water Fund grant agreements. All right. So I'm just going to fill you in, and apologize for reading. This is from Christy Wagner regarding the agreement, so everybody understands it a little bit better. This is a financial agreement between the town and the DEEP, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, required for the state to provide financial assistance to the Clean Water Fund projects. The town's current wastewater facilities planning work through the CDM Smith's Amendment 7C, which was the $80,000, which we executed in July, is eligible for 55% of the grant reimbursement from the Clean Water Fund. The current activities under Amendment 7C for our downtown subsurface investigations and the environmental impact evaluation process is required by DEEP. So for clarity, just note that the prior wastewater facilities planning effort also received grant funding from the Clean Water Fund under grant CWF 127. A new grant is required now since CWF 127 was initiated approximately 10 years ago and has been amended several times. The state was not comfortable with amending it any further. So just to note, we expect the amendment should be able to be amended as needed in upcoming years for the state to continue to provide grant assistance to the town's wastewater facilities planning, design, and construction projects for the future. The tasks are outlined in Amendment 7C, total $80,000 currently are already in progress. The breakdown of the work is $65,400 for subsurface investigation and evaluation of the two downtown sites, $9,400 for project administration, WPCC meetings, and development of the framework for the future sewer service area policies, $5,200 for working with DEEP on the environmental impact evaluation, and Connecticut Environmental Policy Act, the public comment process that would have to take place. This is a new request for money from the town, this is not a new request for money from the town, sorry. Amendment 7C was already funded last fiscal year and executed a few months ago. This is now just the agreement for the town to accept the grant funding or reimbursement from the state.
Right, because we approved the money way back
We did,
when.
and we're already moving forward with the work in the downtown.
So I make a motion, we accept the CWF number 730/PG agreement between the town and,
There's an authorizing resolution that we need to approve.
With them
In your
for-
packet. That's the one I started.
Here it is, it's underneath, yeah, there you go. Do you wanna, can you go ahead and read it then for the record?
okay, so we accept an authorizing resolution which is required to obtain Clean Water Fund grant. Be resolved that it is in the best interest of the town of Clinton to enter into a contract with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. In furtherance of this resolution, Christine Goupil, the first select person, is duly authorized to enter into and sign said contract on behalf of the town of Clinton. The first select person is further authorized to provide such additional information and execute such other documents as may be required by the state or federal government in connection with said contract, and to execute any amendments, rescissions, and revisions thereto. The town clerk is authorized to impress the seal of the town of Clinton on any such document, amendment, rescission, or revision. Now, that's where I should stop, because I'm not sharing Eureka.
All right, do we have
Eureka.
do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on, we have the Complete Streets Policy. So this was brought up at 2 previous Board of Selectmen meetings. At this point, I would be looking for a motion to move forward on this.
I'd make a motion that we accept the resolution adopting a complete streets policy for the town of Clinton based on the draft of October 7th, 2019.
All right, I'll just, for the record, I'll read the resolution. Whereas the town of Clinton actively promotes safe streets through design, education, and enforcement of all its transportation networks, and whereas complete streets are right-of-ways that are planned, designed, constructed, operated, and maintained in such a way as to enable safe, comfortable, and convenient access along and across the right-of-way by users of all ages, abilities, including but not limited to pedestrians, bicyclists, transit riders, motorists, emergency, freight, commercial vehicles operators, and whereas complete streets may facilitate amenities including but not limited to paving, markings and signs, sidewalks, pedestrian safety improvements such as medians, curbs, extensions and crosswalks, ADA, Americans with Disabilities Acts, accessible curb ramps, and accessible pedestrian signals, transit shelters, signage and improvement, pedestrian bicycle access to transit stops and stations, bicycle detection at intersections and wide travel lanes, bike lanes or shared use lanes, bicycle parking facilities, street trees, landscaping, street lighting, street furnitures, and adequate drainage facilities, including opportunities for storm water quality treatment facilities. And whereas the Bike and Pedestrian Alliance of Clinton, BPAC, advocates for adopting a complete streets policy, and whereas the Town Plan of Conservation and Development, POCD, has specifically recommended implementing and following complete street policy, including the consideration of adding or modifying striping on existing roadways to provide for safer bicycle and pedestrian travel. And now therefore it be resolved that the Board of Selectmen in the Town of Clinton that the attached complete streets policy is adopted and shall be applicable to the planning and design of all new transportation complete streets improvement initiated after the adoption hereof.
Second.
Further discussion?
I have a, sorry. Has this been looked at by the insurance provider for the town? Because my understanding is that this promises to deliver a certain level of care of the roads at all times. And if we don't deliver on that promise, that the town can be liable for damages or injury or anything else, this makes a much tighter standard of liability for the town.
It's no different than the DOT standard. So if DOT is creating a standard that is a liability for the town, then the insurance policy would raise that issue. So it's no different. This just gives guidelines to
I'm not sure what that means.
DOT, or Department of Transportation, has guidelines for any improvements on streets, and so this has to fall within DOT guidelines. You cannot make any changes to streets improvements that do not fall within a DOT guideline already as it is.
That's not my question. My question is, this conveys that things will be kept at a certain level at all times, and if it's not,
No, it says moving forward, that design and transportation moving forward will go towards these guidelines. It's not talking about pre-existing.
no, but I'm saying, I mean, yeah, I understand that, but in the future, does this open
It's
more
no different
avenues of
than
liability?
It's no different than the current program where you pave a road and you maintain a road. You're maintaining your sidewalks, you're maintaining your curb cuts, you're maintaining your traffic signals so that they're accessible. You have to do those as it is. This is a policy to help remind the town and any planning element that these are the things that we'd like to see move forward. It's not a creation of a liability for the town.
I'm just not really sure why we have to do this.
because it is in our plan of conservation development, and so the Planning and Zoning Commission had it as one of their action items to move forward. It also speaks to creating a more healthy environment for our community by having these things planned out in the future so that we are more accessible for Americans with disabilities, that we make it more walkable or bicycle friendly. But it also speaks to any developer coming to town that these are things that the town would like to see them commit to a project as well. So it's a policy, it's helped guide the town towards a certain direction as opposed to not having a policy, which would be do status quo. That's essentially it. It doesn't hurt, there's no harm, let's say.
All right.
Okay.
Just don't get it. It's not the first thing I just don't get.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the Pearson School Charrette. So on November 2nd, Saturday, November 2nd, between 9 and 12 p.m., we are going to be having the charrette at the Pearson School. This is to help plan the future for the historic Abraham Pearson School. Clinton residents and business owners will be invited to participate and share their thoughts on the best ways to utilize the school, the former school. It will be facilitated by Connecticut Economic Resource Center. We are going to have volunteers or facilitators from the Pearson Future Use Committee helping with the process. The decision-making process will introduce the community to the project team with a variety of backgrounds that can help set and agree on common project goals. That's one of the things to establish. It'll develop early consensus on priorities for the use of the building, provide early understanding of the potential impacts for the various strategies, initiate a process to reduce project costs and schedules to obtain the best outcome for the future use, identify project strategies for exploration with their associated costs and time constraints, and needed expertise to eliminate costly surprises later in the implementation process. So we'll be identifying partners and available grants and potential collaborations that can provide expertise, funding, and credibility to support any type of project with the building as well. So I hope everybody is able to attend Saturday, 9 to 12 p.m. I'm looking.
November 2nd.
I'm sorry, did I say this?
You just said Saturday.
Oh, I'm sorry.
so I wasn't-
November, thank you, November 2nd, Saturday to participate. We are going to ask that people do RSVP to the town so that the fire marshal won't have to cut people off at a certain point. So we want to make sure that we have a well-allocated or well-assessed number coming in.
Does CERT provide any pre-publicity, any method of, getting the word out, I guess is.
We're working together on that. We have the flyer, and so we'll put it on the town social media. We're going to put it through the town, so they're going to help work with us as well to get it out.
I would like to have everybody's opinion on what to do with that building.
Is there an agenda?
So I just sort of read through the agenda.
Oh,
of
so
what
there's
it's
going to be different rooms to go into?
There's going to be different tables for people to go to. Generally, we'll have them go to maybe 3 to 4 different tables based on their feeling about what direction the building should go to, and then the conversation will be facilitated around that, and then they're going to try to get some collaboration.
Well, what I'm getting at is 9 to 12 is a big soccer time
I know.
for the young families, and they're going to want to go. And they're not going to want to be there, they won't be able to be there for 3 hours.
No, you don't need to come.
No,
You don't need to be there the whole time.
That's what I just
It's a
asked,
drop-in type thing.
Okay,
No,
that's
absolutely. You
what I was
come
getting
in, you
at.
give your opinion, you listen to the.
This isn't like the open house. Will they be able to walk through the school at all?
No.
It'll just be these specific rooms?
Yes.
That are open for
Yes.
discussions?
We can't do the walkthrough just because of the sheer quantity of people and the liability of people wandering off and trying to corral people and then bring them back to the room for the conversation. We're just going to try to streamline the conversation and get the objectives.
Well, whoever ran that open house, it would be nice to enlist some help from them, however they reached people to let them know to come to that, because that was very well attended. Was that,
That's a historical. It was a collaboration. School
Oh,
is
okay.
historical.
All right.
Yeah. This will we can this goes off to schools as well. So it'll go to the parents through the school system.
Well, if you give me a list, I'll give them out at soccer games.
Sure.
There'll be a soccer game, so
Hand them up.
I'll hand them out.
Okay,
All
great.
right, does anybody?
But there's no presentation there. You go
No.
table to table and you talk to different.
They'll
folks.
probably do a presentation in the beginning, talking about the
Oh.
facilitating, but at the end of the day, people, as they straggle in, will get up to date.
You get like a feedback form or something.
I don't think they're handing out a form, it's
No.
a conversation. It's getting the input there, from the people who participate.
It's not like a survey.
It's-
Like happened with the Route 81 corridor study.
No, it's
There was an
different.
actual survey.
That was a long study process, that was a year-long process study. So this, working on the future use committee, part of that process would be marketing feasibility studies, all those things that sort of got incorporated into a corridor study, similar objectives.
Yep.
But that's a
Okay.
longer term process. This is really boiling it down to what does our community, the businesses in the community want to see in that building? And so that we can help drive rezoning of it and drive how we're going to market it out if we determine that the ultimate use is something needs to be sold on, or if it's going to be a town facility, how that use gets determined.
Okay.
But I agree with Carolee, the more people there, the better off we are.
Up to this point, right, if it's 700 people, we'll probably have a problem.
Well, doesn't the school have a big
You said
email
9 to
list?
12.
We can only manage, no, I'm just saying, we can, the facilities why, the fire marshal's in here, but I can't speak to the numbers. The room only accommodates a certain number of people. If we get to a maximum and we reevaluate, say we're gonna have to have a second one, we'll have a second one, and that's what we'll have to do.
It's not in the gym area?
Yeah, it is.
It is, but it only accommodates a certain number.
Well, that's a pretty big number though, isn't it?
Cafeteria's there too. We'll see.
Okay, so that's all I have to report on that. Phil, update on the town manager?
Yeah, no, things are moving along. We're on this timeline and the search committee has the briefing information for the semi-finalists, including video interviews, which we can look at. Some had a little technical trouble with them, but, and then when we have, and then we'll meet ourselves to discuss the semi-finalists, and then when the council people are elected, we're gonna have a meeting with them on November 12th. I mean, we'll share with them as soon as we know who's elected and there's no ties in the election or anything like that. We'll provide them with the briefing booklets and the links to the interviews that were done online. And then we'll meet with them on November 12th to go over all this information with SGR. Doug Thomas will be there. And then we want to come out of that meeting with, we always say 3 to 5 finalists. I hope it's 5 to give a broader choice. And then that'll be who gets invited to the December 2nd and 3rd interviews. So, so far so good. Had a couple of dropouts, but that's to be expected, I am told, for different reasons, family reasons, or, they decided they don't want to live where they are now. It becomes real when you get the phone call and say, guess what, you made it this far. Are you in for sure? Sometimes people get cold feet or, they have reasons why they can't, sickness of a very close family member, whatever.
At the last meeting of all the candidates, Doug Thomas said something about the bio books relating to each candidate would be around about October 18th. Have you had any of those?
They came today, actually.
Oh, okay.
They
Now,
came today.
honestly, I left that meeting thinking that those would be able to be looked at by council candidates.
After the election.
Yeah, I'm not gonna,
Well, I'm sitting here now thinking that doesn't make any sense, but that was.
because if I don't get elected,
I
I don't need to see them.
No, they'll be given to the people that are elected.
Mhm.
Makes sense.
Again, it's really a confidentiality issue because all these people have jobs and they have to be
it has to be kept confidential until it has to become public, and then we give them 48 hours to tell whoever they have to tell that, guess what, I'm in this process. And so, you need to know this before you hear it from somebody else. So, so I expect after December 12th, then we'll use Doug Thomas's guidance on that as to when, those names should be released, and because we want the public to come on December, particularly on December 2nd, so they would have to be notified that these are the people that are coming here. This is where they're coming from, and you're going to have a chance to interact with them and get a sense of what's going on. And away we go. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I would suggest that the new council maybe have a special meeting the morning after they do the interviews, and to make their choice. That'd be the morning of December 4th. Matter of fact, Doug Thomas, I talked to him today. He said I think I should not leave until I know what the schedule is. In other words, he's willing to stay December 4th for the follow-up or, whatever. Oh, this.
You have it on this timeline.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. But I'll talk to, I'll talk to the elected council people as soon as we know who they are, and then I suppose get with Mary or Christine, because the meetings have to be noticed anyway. I mean, when you interview the people, that's got to be a noticed meeting, I assume. When the council,
Right.
it's got to be a noticed meeting. And then if there's a follow-up meeting, it's the same thing. So they can take a vote if they want to, which they would probably want to, I hope. But I've looked at some of the interviews already, and I'm pretty satisfied. It looks like there's some real good people. It's not a surprise. I mean, we picked them based on a lot of information. So, well, when you see them in an interview, of course, it'll be better when you see them in person, but at least we can see them now answering questions in a video type interview. We at least see how they handle themselves, kind of quality answers they give, and that sort of thing, how comfortable they are in front of the camera. This is a very public position, so that's about it.
Okay. You
Nothing
want
else.
anything else, no? You want to go to selectmen's reports?
Yeah, no, I don't think I have anything else. This is pretty much my function now, period.
Big function.
Start
No
with
comments.
Tim? No selectmen's report? No.
I did go to the police commission meeting, half of it, had another meeting. I checked my notes and left them at home. So I'll report next week.
I don't have anything to report, other than, yes, water pollution has done has started the testing process for the downtown area. I think Christine mentioned that already. And they find themselves in a critical phase right now because there's a lot of work coming up, and they can use all the help they can get. I did want to say, I'm so glad the town got through that storm last week as relatively unscathed as we did.
Kidding.
I mean, the forecast being what it was, and the prediction, I think we got off very, very well, all things considered, so.
Yep.
It's not a selectmen's report, it's just a comment.
Good comment.
Great. Just a couple notes. The CCM is working on a property tax reform commission, so membership of CCM is going to have their first meeting, and the commission is going to be in charge of examining the improvement of delivery of local services in a cost-effective and property taxpayer-focused manner. The commission will examine structural changes needed to make towns and cities thus the state, more economically viable and more attractive, a place to call home, work, and run businesses. So CCM is taking it upon themselves to do that, which is, I think, good initiative. Other things I just want to report, we had the COG meeting today. FHI is now going to be allocated, FHI is Fitzgerald and Halliday, who had completed the Route 81 corridor study, is now going to be funded through DOT to continue engagement for the town with the developer at DOT. So DOT is going to make a commitment for additional funding for them to communicate with DOT as to the plan that was put forward.
It's a good thing.
So we're scheduling a meeting with DOT to sit down and look at that plan in relation to the Indian River
Wow.
development.
Yeah.
So, which is great. I'm really thrilled that they're willing to participate in the process in that way and commit to it.
Recognized as a major development.
Yeah, yeah. So we're just trying to tie up all the, tie everybody together to get everybody to a meeting with DOT, and FHI will be there. So I'm thrilled to have the experts from that standpoint speaking to the project as well. And let's see, the other thing is the natural hazards mitigation plan is now moving forward. They have a timeline of 12 months, so I will be the representative communicating from the town to the COG until the council, if they determine to change who that person is. But it's a very short timeline, but this is a really important plan for the town, especially in light of the storm damage that took place in last September, because the plan needs to reflect that and any potential, not remediation, starts the other M. What am I looking for?
Modification.
It's like that, as I'm just looking for the word for it. Essentially, any ability for us to make changes, improvements to those areas in relation to the plan. The plan needs to dictate it, and then we can actually look for funding to make those improvements. There's that, and then the other thing is we did receive a commitment letter to. This is the project for sidewalks along the western part of Main Street on Route 1. So this comes out of the Route 1 corridor study. Then it was communicated that with the engineering and then construction. So we did get commitment for the $400,000 for that project, and I'll be coming back to the town for our match for that, probably the next board of selectmen meeting.
That's been a while in the works.
No, this one's a new one. This was
West Main Street, that was under the previous administration.
well, the Route 1 corridor study, the engineering portion of it had been, not the engineering portion, the study part has been completed. I had asked the COG to put this on their list of projects.
Good.
So it got accepted because it's based on criteria, and because of the train station, it just makes sense.
So you mentioned a matching.
Oh, this
There's
is
gonna be a
nice.
match. There's always a certain match the town has to contribute to it. So I'll get you the letter, the commitment letter, and we'll probably discuss it at the next board of selectmen meeting. Okay. Let's see what else I have to discuss today. I think that is it for now. Yep, that's it for now. We have an executive session. I probably just ask for a recess before we go into the executive session, if that's all right with everybody. And when we go into executive session, we'll do the motion. Do you want to do the motion now to go? Yeah. So we'll do the motion to go into executive session, and we're going to, we have two parts of the conversation. So to invite Wendy McDermott in and Sue Cunningham.
At the same time?
No.
No, not at the same time, but I'm just, and then Mary Scatino. So are you looking for that motion?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Can you say it out loud? I'm only kidding. That's a joke.
Okay, I'm clear. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Executive session. I would be looking for four motions this evening. One would be related to the administrative assistant to the police, chief of police.
I would make a motion to approve the contract for the administrative assistant to the chief of police as written.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next is the contract for the finance director.
I'll make a motion to accept the contract for the, to the way you use the name or just finance director?
You can use the name.
Sue Cunningham, finance director,
All right,
Dated,
dated October 1st.
second?
Oh, and do we have to mention, oh,
Yeah,
second.
what about the,
Oh,
finance, with the
and-
title of finance director?
No, and then the
No,
remainder of the
remember.
contract, the first selectman town manager may increase the salary at their discretion as authorized by the town council.
Very good. That's it.
Do we have a
You were gonna
second?
say that, weren't you? Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The next is the, increasing the part-time, retroactive to the beginning of the fiscal year. We had already done the increase, but we did not apply the retroactive, and it is minimal.
I'll make a motion to apply that increase to the 3 part-time individuals retroactive to July 1st, 2019.
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And then going to the clerk, the meeting clerks, trying to bring up the hourly rate to be competitive with surrounding towns. I'd be looking for a motion to do that as
Do you
well.
want the hourly rate? 17?
no, can we just say whatever the union,
The base level of the
Right.
union, the clerical union contract is base level for hourly rate.
So moved.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I would be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Well,